this panel is all about getting inside the minds of business brokers. The name of the game in search, or there's a lot of names of the game in search, but deal flow is certainly one of them. And brokers got it. Brokers are the ones with the deals often, unless you go proprietary. So understanding their perspective, understanding what they want to see, understanding their perspective of you is important. And so we have these three very experienced, very respected brokers on stage that we're going to learn about that from. If we could do quick introductions. Jackie first, please.
Hi, my name is Jackie Hirsch. I'm the founder of Crown Atlantic Business Brokers. I'm also an advisor and investor on the Dealonomy platform. That's how I met Walker, actually. And then I'm actually a Minds Capital investor as well. And I've sold a few companies, like 400. So I've been doing this a while, and I'm also an investor on, LPs, on just SMB deals and funds. And then I bought a periodical last year, which Will loves the entertaining stories about that. I'm like, I will not be on your podcast. And so I'm really happy to be here. This is really just a pleasure.
Jackie, you're a career broker. This is the first and last thing you've done, right? Well, not last, but the first right up until now.
Yeah,
right?
I started at 22.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Thank you. Lane.
Yeah, I'm Lane Carrick. I'm the founder, managing director of Optima Mergers and Acquisitions. And Jackie started at 22 and has sold 400 businesses. I started at 65, and I've sold about 30 businesses. So I was trying to do the math of how many deals I'd have to close per month to catch up with her and with Gregory, who's done 4,000 deals. So I'm the rookie on the panel, but I think I can offer some value. Optima is really a lower middle market broker, but we do some deals below 10 million, which is where we intersect with you. I started a wealth management firm and a bank. The bank was, I did roll-ups underneath each of those, did acquisitions, sold the wealth management firm to what became part of Goldman Sachs, sold the bank to Simmons Bank. So I've rolled up, I've been rolled up. I chaired a bank board, so I've been a lender and a borrower and a buyer and a seller. So I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on this, but I'm still learning, and I expect to learn from this panel today.
Good afternoon. My name's Gregory Kovsky. I'm the president and CEO of IBA. IBA is the oldest business brokerage firm in the Pacific Northwest. We've been in business since 1975. I am the second owner. I joined the firm in 94, made a name selling two industries that do not even exist today, one being travel agencies when they used to be chains, and the other selling ISPs, the old internet service providers, in a classic big fish eating smaller fish marketplace. Bought the firm from the founder, Bill Osofsky, in 2000, and have been at the helm for 25 years, and this year's our 50th anniversary. So we're at the equal point in ownership, and I will move forward and work with my colleagues and all of you to transition the silver tsunami.
Thank you all. Great. So first question, of course, we in this room are extremely aware of business brokers. I wonder if the business broker community is as aware of searchers. What is the awareness and reputation in general among the business broker community of people in this room? Honest answers only.
Okay. So I've been very supportive of searchers, which is how I got in this room. And I've spoken on a lot of these, spoken on panels and for different organizations. When I mention to other brokers that I work with searchers, they look at me as if I crawled out of like a corner somewhere. And they just don't want anything to do with it. Is the deal harder? Yes. Does the deal sometimes fall apart? Yes. Are you dealing with somebody inexperienced? Yes. Is it more fun when you help them beat private equity? Yes.
Well, I do work with searchers. I will say that recently I'm getting a higher frequency of calls from searchers that I can immediately say you've read Buy Then Build because they have the whole program, right? They've got, this is what I'm looking for, this is how much business I can buy, here's my bio, here's a link to my website. So I would just say the dispersion in terms of qualifications and presentation of searchers is really, really wide these days. So I get a lot of very unprepared folks that are kind of shotgunning that are not a good use of my time, and I get very prepared and professional people. So I would just say in the context of this panel, presenting is important. How you present, the professionalism in which you present is going to have a huge impact on my perception and my desire to put you in front of my seller.
And just to be clear, Elaine, when you immediately can tell that they're a Walker Dibble searcher, that's a good thing?
It is a very good thing, yes.
Because they've done their buyer profile, they're prepared, they got their ducks in a row.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Gregory.
My brokers, of which I have 18 out in the field doing transactions, have a love-hate relationship with searchers. Their biggest complaint is they don't understand the marketplace, being that it's a seller's marketplace. It has always been a seller's marketplace in my 31 years because our clients, being a selective firm, are doing what they enjoy, executing their vision, and making money. So none of them need to sell. So when one of those goes to market, there is high demand. So many searchers who come to us think we're going to be excited to talk to them and are not prepared. Now, with the acquisition lab, which we enjoy working with them, they do come prepared and achieve success. We completed this year a transaction where a former Nike exec bought a company in Portland, Oregon, who came out of the acquisition lab and did a great job. We sold a company which was represented by Matt, who's going to speak later, an attorney in the Seattle marketplace recently. And a compliment to Acquisition Lab and Walker's organization is that out of 6 offers recently to buy a countertop manufacturing company, the winner was from Acquisition Lab. It's an escrow pending sale. And our client picked them $200,000 below highest offer because they thought it was a better transition for their employees, for their customers, and their vendors.
What did they see in this searcher that they thought would make for a better transition?
Amazing. It was a husband and wife team. Amazing life experience. It was running a manufacturing side where they fabricate the countertops, and then a sales organization and an installation operationally, plus the marketing platform. So they thought the two of them had the ability to take this company, which this year will do about $9 million in revenue, into 8 figures. And so they thought it had grown beyond their capability and recognized that the education and skill set these buyers had was probably just what the doctor ordered.
Great. I remember from an early interview with Clint Fiore, who's somewhere here. Clint, there he is. Clint's a business broker, and my memory to this day from that 3-year-old interview is certainty to close. Clint was like, "This is our filter that we think about every potential buyer we talk to, searcher, private equity, otherwise. What is this person or this party's certainty to close?" So for the 3 of you, when you think about certainty to close, give us your top green flag and your top red flag for a searcher.
Geography, top green flag.
If they're in the same geography,
They're in the same geography.
that you weight it heavily toward them.
Definitely. That's a higher level, as Clint would say, certainty to close. One of those things. And then second, green flag, industry experience. Red flag, they know way more than anybody that has ever walked the face of the earth.
Wayne?
Well, I was thinking of this in the context of ability to close. So, I've spent a lot of time with buyers, both searchers and non-searchers, that didn't have, there wasn't a clear line of sight to the capital to get a deal done. And so that's just my first priority, is to understand. And I thought what was announced this morning could really be transformative, because it is a cart and horse issue, right? I want to see the money, but the money may not be there until the deal is there and they've negotiated it. And that's with searchers, and that's with independent sponsors as well. And I've had deals fail with both searchers and independent sponsors. So that's the worst position to be in our seat, is when you marry your client to a buyer that can't perform.
Great. So the red flag would be, I don't think this person has money or can get the money.
Yes.
What is your favorite thing to see from a searcher? That they do have the money.
Well, aside from the money,
same red flag and green flag are the same.
I think the geography is important. It's kind of hard to define qualitatively what a cultural fit is, but I think we've all probably introduced people, buyers and sellers, and seen where there were disconnects and where they got along, and so it's a journey. I mean, I think Firmex, who publishes a survey on all things related to lower middle market deals, said that 30% of deals in the lower middle market between LOI and closing fall out. So if a third of deals aren't getting done post LOI, that fit between the buyer and seller is really important. But I don't know that you can turn it into a set of checklist items.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it I think is just subjective.
Sure. What about you, Gregory?
I definitely agree. They've hit big money answers on the Family Feud board, but I would add relevant experience is a huge one. Do they know this space at some level? So that is very important. And then I always also look the capital and signature power. Do they have the horses to weather a storm? I mean, having done this 31 years, I was there for Y2K. I was there for the Great Recession. I was there for COVID. And things are going to happen. We deal with Florida, where my colleague is with hurricanes, and my family owns the Sanibel Cafe on Sanibel Island, and they've been hit with 2 hurricanes in a short time frame.
Let's get into the question of relevant experience. It speaks for itself, why it's a good thing. It might be a little triggering for this audience, because a lot of searchers are looking at, they're industry agnostic. Many of them are looking to get out of the industry that they're in, and buying a business in something else is their way to do that. So how would you advise them to reconcile that? Jackie, you go ahead.
Yeah. So, there's a steel erection business I have for sale. It's welding steel structures. Sorry, but it is called steel erection. But it's on the Dealonomy platform. And yes, we were having fun with it at lunch. For that, I got a call from somebody who wanted to run it from Texas, right? Because it's located in Arkansas. And this is one of those things that happens sometimes, is searchers call and they're like, oh, I can just run it from wherever and it'll be fine. Not every business is a remote business, but this guy runs an $84 million P&L in construction, specifically went to school for construction management, and is responsible for part of the P&L, also the people, also purchasing equipment. I was like, okay. This guy might actually be able to run this from afar because he runs his other units in different states, but he works for somebody else. It made a little bit of sense. He could buy this company, leverage it. It'd be an easy path in, and then he can go from there. I'm going to answer that. I'm not joking. No, okay. So he can leverage that and get an in, because the fastest way to start being seen as a good acquirer is to acquire one deal. And once you acquire one deal, it is like a waterfall. People start bringing you stuff, right? Like Mine's Capital, they just start bringing you stuff. And that's everybody's dream. If you've seen me cornered when people asking me for my off-market deals, it's happened 3 times already this morning, so, they want that off-market deal. They want those deals. One of the people just smiled at me that said that they know that they did that. So, I think that's the relevant experience does matter to do certain things. And to get around that, you can go out and get some relevant experience. And I know that sounds shocking, but like you could do some construction type items and see how it goes. See if you like it. You could do some tech sort of items and see how it goes. So there's nothing wrong with going out and getting your hands dirty and seeing if you like it. And that's something that I do recommend to people. And if they kind of back off, I'm like, this might not be for you. It's a dirty business.
What do you think, Lane?
Yeah, I think part of the equation of relevant experience is giving the seller comfort, particularly in deals that you're doing and structuring in the size you are, because there's almost certainly going to be a seller note and there may be a seller earnout. So it's not like they're going to hand you the keys and that's it. They're going to be dependent upon you operating that business successfully in order to satisfy those additional obligations. So they want to know that you're capable of operating their businesses. There are a wide range of industries and businesses that anybody with good common business sense can run. And then there's some specialized businesses that take specialized talent. I will tell you a story where it backfires, though. I represented a company manufacturing HVAC components, and one of the searchers that looked at it was a ex-McKinsey consultant who consulted HVAC manufacturing companies. And he was the guy that was smarter than the owner, right? And it just really offended the owner because the guy came in talking about all the things he would do to change his business and make it better. He might have been the ideal buyer, but the way he handled the relationship with that just killed the deal. So maybe there's too much relevant experience at some level.
Relevant experience, but humility. Maybe that's the killer
That would have
combo.
helped.
Yeah. Gregory?
Well, I would start with the end. Talking to Heather and Joe here today, two exceptional bankers with a wealth of experience, we will often send potential buyers to bankers and say, would you approve me for a loan? Because in SBA guidelines, they are going to vet relevant experience and let them actually be the bad guy and say, you've run a chain of restaurants, you're probably not an architect. And that type of feedback from trusted collaborative partners is very important. And then the second side, though relevant experience is important, I always say at the end of the day, it's financial management, it's marketing, it's people management, it's product quality, and you can learn a lot of products if you have the executive skill to oversee those 4 divisions. You probably have the ability, provided you can make decisions under fire, to run a company.
We talked in the investor panel about, Jason was using the word squishy, the kind of qualitative stuff, the EQ stuff. We've heard now a couple of times that people can come off as arrogant, buyers can come off as arrogant, maybe searchers in particular, which is surprising given that we are the least experienced buyers in the market. What other characteristics of the interaction, the behavior do you see from searchers that are not good? So arrogance is one. Any others?
They're not always self-aware of what the seller wants to hear. So I had a Stanford guy come to see a commercial glass business, and I had first brought him a searcher, right? So I brought him like one of my favorite kinds of searchers, military veteran, MBA, engineer, married with 3 kids. Okay, so and like specific, like, but those searchers, like you made it through a war, and then you got married, and then you have kids, and then you've worked a job steadily, and then you got your MBA. So these people have a lot of tenacity typically. But anyway, so I brought him this amazing searcher, and I knew I'd have to help raise. And what that means, I don't raise money, but like I call my friends and say, hey, bet on this guy. Here's the deck. right? And anyway, so that's what I would have to do, and that's the extra work, but it's a little bit satisfying. So the Stanford guy comes in, and he thought the meeting went spectacularly well, and the seller loved him, and the seller hated him and said, I don't beeping want to ever see that guy in my office again. I was like, you got it. And so it made the deal with the searcher so much easier, because this guy had private equity experience. He had all sorts of stuff. He was also a searcher. He, just sounds like this McKinsey guy. And I've worked with some McKinsey guys who are just amazing, but sometimes they can be tone deaf. And I don't know if searchers understand how emotional it is for the seller. It's so emotional. I've had numerous sellers cry on the phone, cry in my office, cry in their office. This is like the one child they had, their bespoke creation that they birthed, and maybe the only child that ever listened to them. Like, this is like everything, right? Like, it's real. It's very intense. And I brought one of my sellers recently a huge offer, a multiple far beyond their wildest dreams. And he panicked. He's like, oh my God, my tax bill is going to be $3.1 million, and they're just going to waste it, right? So then we had to go on to like a USA, conversation, like, okay, we live in the USA, and like, it's going to be okay. Although I loved Walker's guy this morning talking about tax, but it's a very emotional journey. And I think that's why searchers can sometimes really win the deal and beat out $200,000 under, the price, because the sellers really want that. And that is something that I believe the lab prepares the searchers. The lab teaches searchers how to run those meetings, how to sensitively ask certain questions instead of shoulding them, right? You should be doing this. Why aren't you doing that? Like, the second you start doing that, you will watch the seller's morale just fall. And as soon as you leave, you will never come back.
Wow. I've also had an experience where I had a meeting. It wasn't a searcher, it was private equity, and we had 3 firms come in to a seller in Austin and had a beauty pageant, and they flew in from various places, and one came in from the East Coast. This was a Texas guy who had a landscaping company, 30 million top line revenue, and he started cutting grass in high school and turned it into an extremely valuable business. And he had boots and a t-shirt and blue jeans, and these guys came in from the East Coast, and we spent a half a day with them. And I thought the meeting went very well. And as soon as they left, he said, I never want to see those people again. So you're right, that emotional connection. I don't know that they did anything wrong, but it is a really sensitive thing. And the sellers are very sensitive to that. You just have to be able to read the room. I guess I would add, in terms of what do I not like, or where do I get rubbed with searchers, I would just say that from the seat I sit in, I'm working deals all day. Finding buyers is the least challenging part of my day. If I have a good business, people will find me even if I don't have any idea how on earth they came to find my business. But we will use Biz Buy Sell on occasion. We don't always use it, particularly if we have larger deals. We use Axial. We have 3,000 people, buyers, on our proprietary database that we do an email blast out to. We have a network of people that talk about our deals. We have a website that has our deals on them. So, I get calls all day from buyers, whether they're private equity or they're searchers, and that I just can't afford to take the time to commit to educating someone on the process. And one of the biggest challenges I have with uneducated searchers, and I would exclude the people in this room by virtue of the fact that you're here and part of this, is they don't understand the process. They'll call and they'll say, when can I meet the seller? And it's like, maybe never, I don't know, but we got a lot of ground to cover, before we get there. So that's probably my biggest turnoff, is if they call, they expect a piece of my time. They expect me to educate them on the process, and I don't have to do that because I have buyers. That's the least challenging part of what I do.
What a great point. What do you think, Gregory?
I would say focusing on all the elements needed to close the deal and buy the business, and that there are other decision makers external to the deal. So 3 examples from Washington State. we're active in the cannabis space in the Northwest as an entrepreneurial venue. Well, in Washington, you need to be a resident for multiple months before you can own a cannabis business. So if you didn't know that, then you could make the best offer, but how are you going to bridge that, I believe off the top of my head, 6-month period of in-state residency before you can complete that acquisition? If you're buying an electrical business in Washington, you need an electrical administrator's license. Very frequently, the owner of the company holds that license. You don't need to be an electrician. It's related to following state policies and procedures. So you need that. And how are you going to problem solve? Often the seller will stay on for a while in that role for transition, but you need to understand that. And then finally, and this hits searchers often hard, you're coming out of MBA programs frequently, you have a high debt level, and you're buying a company which you may, based on prior experience, personal skill set, family heritage, whatever, be very inclined to run. The problem is the landlord needs to approve you as a tenant and remove the seller from future liability. If it's a $25,000 a month lease and you need a 10-year term in order to get your SBA loan, and you could do a 5-year with a 5-year option, that's significant signature power. And the landlord generally does not care whether the sale happens. They have a time-tested, proven tenant who's paying rent. So those are the types of things that an educated searcher will have solved for those variables before making an offer.
Lane, you had also mentioned real estate as a sticking point in some deals you've seen.
Sure. A great point that Gregory makes. I have had deals get almost to the closing table before anybody wakes up and goes, wait a minute, we got a lease here. Sometimes if the real estate's owned, that's a separate issue by the seller. I have a deal right now that should have closed a month ago, and there's an assignment. It's actually a private equity buyer, so the landlord's delighted to have him replace my seller. But they want to, they're using it as a point of leverage to raise the rent and add terms to the lease that are unattractive to the buyer because they can. And they know they're holding the deal up. That's a really vulnerable point to be in. So Gregory's absolutely right. The earlier you hit that, the better off you are, because they can kill a deal. And they don't seem to care.
Lane, I guess I heard you mention biz buy sell. A side question for all three of you. Is it true that if a deal's on biz buy sell, it's because it's gone through every single other potential buyer and it's only bad stuff on there?
I've had, I have a $65 million top line construction company in the southeastern market right now. It's a hard sell, and I won't get into why, but I put it on biz buy sell somewhat reluctantly because there's a lot of noise associated with dealing with that platform. And we actually got a buyer. We've been presented an LOI from a qualified buyer. What I did do with biz buy sell is I don't just let people sign up and send the SIM out or an NDA in the SIM. Is I have a questionnaire which really honestly screens about 3/4 of the people that inquire. They do not want to answer 10 questions, which is, do you have money? Do you have money? Do you have money? Do you have money? And can you operate the business if you have money? Right? And so they get an email from us when they inquire on biz buy sell, and it's the questionnaire, which is a little more formal than what I described, but nonetheless, about 75% just opt out. But
Yeah.
we found a qualified buyer. So there are buyers on biz buy sell. I don't believe that generalization is fair, but it takes a lot of work to work with biz buy sell on those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of noise.
What do you think, Jackie?
Chris Williams looked at one of my deals with System 6, and it was an accounting deal, and I was telling him 401 NDAs signed on Biz Buy Sell. So we do put stuff on Biz Buy Sell, but I think the trend is that it's closed circuit. And so now on the Dealonomy platform, you have to be signed up. You don't have to pay, but you do have to be signed up to be on that platform and see those deals. Then if you pay the $99, then you get premium access and you see those deals first for, a period of time. And I think that you'll see more and more of that, again, because buyers are not as, to Gregory's point, it is always a seller's market. And I did a post on Twitter talking to Nick Hiloweski from Nickonomics just yesterday. It is always a seller's market. And for 27 years since I've been in the business, always a seller's market.
Yeah, that was such a great, I've never heard that. It's so true.
Will, can I comment?
Oh, sorry, Gregory. Of course.
That's okay.
Please.
So I actually have a positive relationship with Biz Buy Sell. We look at it a couple ways. So like Lane, we have an internal buyer database where those parties in our database get the first opportunity to look at new businesses. We use Biz Buy Sell to fill our buyer database. So we would not see those 400 inquiries as necessarily a negative. We'd use that as an ability to vet those people, put them in our buyer database, and we go real old school. So in addition to vetting their financial capability, we, after they've signed an NDA, we require them to talk to us on the phone. And you'd be amazed at how many of these people who inquire will not engage by phone. And it's been my experience, if you won't get on the phone or a Zoom and introduce yourself and share with us what you're looking for, you're never going to buy a business. So my brokers will collect an NDA, collect a personal financial statement, and then attempt to schedule a call. And it's amazing to us. The percentage who clicked, I'll use the male analogy, in their boxer shorts in their basement on the weekend, they never respond. They never even return an NDA. So it's just a numbers game.
Yeah.
But we do need numbers to sell to create a competitive marketplace for our client. And like the 6 offers that was won by the acquisition lab person, that's what we want to deliver for our clients, because 6 offers speaks to our client about the market. Now we can fine tune those offers to achieve the goal. When you get only 1 offer, they may like you, they may know you and trust you, but it doesn't carry the same weight to say 5 buyers priced your business as this. I believe we can get a little more or improve some of these terms, but one-off, it's really hard to authoritatively talk about market conditions.
Great. Lane, you mentioned not having the time to educate buyers and some buyers wanting that time from you. One of the things that is talked about in Searchland is cultivating relationships with you all, with the brokers, so that I'm in my DC market looking for a business to buy. You're aware of me. Maybe you'll even give me a sneak peek on something before it goes to market. But that cultivating that relationship means taking your time. Oh, I want to take you to lunch, or let's hop on the phone, or whatever. I guess, do you agree that cultivating a relationship is a good strategy for people in this room? First, and second, if so, how to do it in a way that respects your time?
I think it's worthwhile to make the effort to develop relationships. I also think it's going to be challenging to develop those relationships. Again, I cross over into the lower middle market, so most of my deals are bought by private equity. There are thousands of private equity firms. I can't even talk to all the private equity firms that are out there.
Yeah.
it's just very, very challenging. What I will do is if a searcher reaches out to me, I'll say, tell me more about your thesis. What are you looking for? What's the geography? Have you been pre-qualified? Have you read Walker's book? Have you read the Harvard Business Review book? So I will try to assuage my guilt, right? To say, look, these are things you can do to be better prepared. But if you'll tell me what you're looking for, I will then put you in our database. You'll go onto our email list, and we'll tag it for the thing you're looking for. So when we have a listing, if it's a light manufacturer and that's what you told us you're interested in, you'll get an email. But the lunch, not likely. It's probably not going to happen. Yeah.
What do you think, Jackie?
I'm going to call and ask Lane to lunch.
I will accept.
Okay, thank you. Fried catfish.
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, Southern thing.
Yeah, and okra. Do the best you can building a relationship. We talked about this at lunch. You just do the best you can. And just like meeting new people, and you keep at it and you're playing the game. And the more you play the game, the more you're going to win. So you might not be able to be friends with everybody, right? But you can just keep putting yourself out there, keep reaching out. Hey, do you have anything new? But when I tell searchers, and I've told Chelsea this, that I want people to call me specifically on something I have. Jackie, I saw that you had the industrial testings business, and I really like that. I have a science background like Liz, but they're probably not as smart as Liz because she's pretty smart. But they know what they want, and they're clear about it. So if they tell me that I'm deal agnostic, I was talking to Maria and Pia about this, I'm like, that to me is like, I will date a guy someday. Like, it means nothing to me. Like, you're deal agnostic, I'd never want to talk to you about any deal because you're not clued in and self-aware to what you want. And I feel like the lab members do spend a lot of time trying to dial that in with what you will and won't do, because there are things you won't do. I will not crawl in a crawl space. I will hammer a shingle. I will not fix any electrical because I'm afraid of dying. I will do some plumbing, right? Like, you have to think about what it is that you want specifically and be self-aware. And that will get you a lot farther when you ask for brokers' attention. Or if you look at a deal and you provide rapid, clear, exceptional feedback. Thank you so much, Jackie, for letting me see this deal. I really liked the fact that they have this recurring client base. I didn't like the fact that the seller was a drug addict. Maybe not that specific, but that was a real deal I had. So, you just have to keep going with different things and keep at it, and then they'll get to know you. And that is building a relationship. You let them get to know you, and you're personal and you're a real person. That's how Will and I met, actually.
Right on. Gregory, what do you think?
We have a slightly different approach. Well, myself, I'm old school. If someone wants to meet with me, they do it in person. So I only prioritize people who will come into one of our offices and meet with me. And I do allocate a certain amount of time each week for buyers or collaborative partners for that. If you are beyond my geographic area or have high urgency, my Vice President of Business Development, Kurt Meyer, will meet with you, and that's part of his job, is to help onboard people into our buyer database program. Or C, which I think is probably the highest and best use of your time, skipping past the executive team, is to meet with individuals on my team who are in the industry sector that you want to acquire in. If you're looking to acquire an education company, I would tell you should get to know Andrea. If you're wanting cannabis, it would be Seth on my team. If it's HVAC, service trades, it would be Aaron. So within IBA, to avoid people fighting over the same hunk of meat, we specialize into industries, gain advanced knowledge of those spaces, and are in organizations relevant, etc. So if you have an industry sector, you can talk to someone who actually knows that space and has done transactions in that space.
Jackie, you mentioned in passing your story about the searcher, for whatever reason, resonating emotionally with the very emotional seller, right? So let's what do searchers? So we're basically everybody's constantly hearing that searchers are at a disadvantage. Searchers are at a disadvantage. How are they actually at an advantage? How can they turn the quote weakness into strength?
Yeah. Well, that's where being personable, likable, listening, excited. I think sometimes the sellers want to see a younger person that's scrappy and hustles and wants to make a difference and grow the team and be part of the community. They want that and they look for that. And that's a real tangible thing. And so that particular seller also met with this other private equity company, and they had many companies, right? So this was just going to be one of their companies, not the company. For the searcher, it was the company. And this happened to be a minority searcher. And at first he's like, Jackie, I don't really look like him, and I don't know if if we'll get along. I said, you hunt, he hunts. You fish, he fishes. You both like to build things. And this guy, he was an engineer, and he did mill work at a period of time because this was a commercial glass business. And so he was missing, if you're in mill work, you'll understand this. He was missing the tip of one of his fingers, which is kind of a badge of honor a little bit in the mill work space, and gets you a lot of street cred with the guys, right? That you're not just some NBA, but like, I ran a table saw and I wasn't careful enough. But I think that they were looking for somebody who would get in there and really be part of the community and take care of their people. One of the employees was this guy's friend from when he was 14's kids, and she'd worked there for 20 years, right? So like, he can't just leave his friend's kid with some random guy. He needs somebody respectable who's gonna take care of her and take care of the whole team. And they had a smoking table, not cannabis, but they had a smoking table because it's Florida and we do crazy stuff. And it was outside, and he's like, the field crew and the office crew meet at the smoking table and they chat and hang out. And I know the private equity guys would get rid of that table.
Those bad private equity guys. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Making everybody healthy.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. So if we're talking about searchers in the context of private equity and how they distinguish, I think that Jackie's absolutely right. I've worked mostly with private equity, and they work in teams, and it's very impersonal at the beginning of that process, right? And when they do meet with the client, it's very much focused on drilling down, on the financial details, and it's a process. And it's not an exaggeration to say maybe they've looked at 200 deals, right, over the last period of time. So a really motivated searcher with personality that can come in and talk about hunting and fishing, which I've never heard a private equity firm talk about at the table, I think can really, present themselves as being a person as opposed to an entity. I also think that in my experience, even though I've sold lots of businesses to private equity, my sellers universally think private equity people are terrible people, right? They just start with this preconceived idea of whatever movie they've watched, whatever thing they've read in the paper, that private equity is going to come in and tear the business up and fire everybody and not pay them on their note. So I think the searchers actually have an advantage to that extent. I don't agree with that assessment. They're bad actors in private equity. They're really good actors in private equity, just as there are among the searcher industry. But there is, I think, a preconceived idea that you have to be wary of private equity. And I do think they come in with a different process that doesn't really show the personality. So I think that's where searchers can do it. I'd also say, and I heard Walker talk this morning about, and he was more colorful in the way he would describe it than I would, but private equity getting in the space of searchers. And I am seeing that a lot. I mean, we have deals that, a few years ago would have been way too small for private equity, and they are, they are coming downstream. And when they do that, I have a deal right now. It's a towing company. that'll probably, we told them they were worth $5 million. We do front end valuations on our clients to tell them this is where we think you'll trade. If you think you're worth twice that, you need to go back and work on the business instead of going to market. That also helps us so that we don't take businesses to market that aren't possibly going to sell. And we ended up with a private equity buyer, a large player in that space that offered $2 million over the valuation or what any financial buyer would pay. So sometimes you just have to get out of their sandbox, right? Just go where they're not playing. Every day PE calls me looking for residential services business, plumbing, HVAC, pest control. They're paying 3 multiples, 4 multiples of revenue and wealth management and insurance and accounting. I would just say don't try to compete with them there, right? Find space where they're not playing. They'll get tired of that. They'll finish their roll up, right? There won't be anybody left, and they'll move on to the next thing. But I would try to figure out where they are and go in the other direction.
I like something you said there, Lane, that you're you searcher, you're a person, not an entity. That's a great line. Gregory, what do you think?
I'm going to share something that probably is obvious, but sometimes we forget. People like to talk about themselves. So my recommendation is listen, ask inquisitive questions, compliment, don't be critical. There's plenty of time to do that in negotiations if you want a second date.
That is well said. Excellent thoughts up here, guys. Thank you very much. Why don't looks like we have about 3 minutes. How about some quick Q&A? Anybody have a question? Right here.
Hi there. Can you help out a little bit with the brokers' suggested price that they place out there? Sometimes it looks like they went up a little bit. Sometimes it's down market. As a buyer, it's very hard to interpret that. Can you give us a little bit of feedback from you guys?
Did everyone hear Everyone hear the question? The asking price that's listed publicly for the business, sometimes it just seems like completely off. So what is the rhyme or reason? How do brokers come up with that, put that out there, et cetera, right? Essentially, did I get that right?
You want me to take this?
Go ahead.
You have to figure out what price makes sense to you. So how do you do that? Let's break it down. What is it that you need to make? What is your salary? What is the salary that the seller's paying himself or herself, right? So what is that part? What is debt service? What are taxes? And this is, broker math. You can kind of do these estimates in your head. It's not complicated most of the time. Sometimes it's more complicated than others, but I think ultimately there is a price where it makes sense for you to take the risk to buy the company. You can calculate that. So I would first start with that. Forget about the price. Like you want to make, let's say it's 800 EBIT, which private equity and strategics are still coming down, but that's like a possible deal that you can get as an individual, right? And what that makes sense after debt service. Do you have to move? Do you have to raise everybody's salaries? Like there are a lot of companies that traded in 2021, but the salaries didn't keep up, and so then they had to really do a dramatic salary raise to keep up, and it really affected the bottom line. Or interest rates dramatically increased during that time on that adjustable SBA loan. So there's all these different metrics and factors that you can pretty easily and quickly calculate. So first run those numbers to even see if it makes sense. Then if you like the deal, just make an offer. So there's a lot of reasons that brokers put prices. And if I understood that as a broker, I think I could win a Nobel Peace Prize. I don't, right? There's a lot of reasons that sellers want what they want. Sometimes they marry a number in their mind that they think is success to them, and it makes no sense, and it's based on nothing, but they still want it. It's like the guy you knew in school that wanted to marry the Victoria's Secret supermodel, right? And nobody understood why, and he didn't really care if she was a person, right? They marry some image or some number, right? So you have to first get beyond that. And again, go with what makes sense for you first. And that's how you look at all deals. It's your deal, you're the buyer. And then from there, you can calculate.
Just as a follow-up to that, it seems like it's overpriced by 50%.
There's a company I won't mention because it's impolite, but it rhymes with generational schmequity. And so, sometimes there'll be deals out there and there's prices on them. And again, like there's a valuation and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But if it's overpriced, that deal might not be getting any activity and you might be able to get the deal. So again, this is your game. It's up to you how you want to play the game and how you want to spend your time, because it's always going to take your time. But if you like the deal, make an offer.
And if it's overpriced because the seller's married to a number, broker knows it's a bad number, overpriced number. If you submit a number, that's giving them intel that they can then go take back to their seller and be like, look, the market is telling us this. And so that'll help make the argument over time. And then you've already put in an offer, IOI effectively, and you're on the radar. One of my guests, Johannes Hawk, when they were doing their search, they basically, every deal they looked at, they didn't even look at the asking price. It might just as soon not have been there. They reconstructed their own offer number based on the information they had. And they just sent out IOIs with that. And not to lowball. They weren't necessarily lowballing. They were just kind of like Jackie just said, they were coming up with what they thought made sense for their needs, for the price of the business and so on. Didn't even look at the asking price, just came out with their own price, own number. Guys?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would submit an IOI on it. I'll ask people if they say I'm not sure that, and I don't use an asking price, and I understand that can be problematic for people in the space. I'd much rather not have an asking price and be able to engage than to have a ridiculous asking price and have no idea whether you want to bid on the company or not. I will tell you, I think the market's pretty darn efficient, particularly in a certain size range when you have SBA borrowers. I have a $5 million party rental business in the Southeast, and we didn't have a price on it. We got 4 offers, and the difference between the high and the low was within $400,000 on a $5 million transaction. So everybody's running the same math. So to Jackie's point, the math. I don't want to tell people what it's worth. I don't want to chase people away. But I don't know that I'd waste a lot of time. I just say, tell me what you're thinking, and then I'll go back to my client and say, look, here's what's happening. The market's telling you. Although I wouldn't take them to market with that inflated price. That's why we do a front-end valuation, is to say, look, here's where you're going to trade. If you're willing to trade there, I'll take you to market. If you're not, you need to go back and work on the business to get to the valuation that you want. So I have no respect for brokers that take businesses to market at ridiculously inflated prices, or they're doing an injustice to their client.
I'll just give a short answer in this. And the reality is business valuation is a subjective science. 10 brokers, experts could value the same company and come up with 10 different valuations. There is not one exact answer. The market will true it up. And one of my complaints with buyers is too often you're backwards looking. You're just looking at historical financials. You do not look at the appreciation potential with an acquisition. And the reality is, as of today, let's say every one of you in the room closed on a deal at the end of the year. Not one of you truly cares what the business did in 2025. You care what it does in 2026. And you really can only assess the acquisition price and the purchase post-transaction based on your ROI. And a lot of that is dependent on your executive management ability.
Thank you all for your attention. Lane, Gregory, Jackie, thank you guys for excellent knowledge. Appreciate it.